guys, it's Always Improving, and today I'm back with another watercolor video. This video I'm going to be painting a portrait piece, and unlike last video, I'm going to be using my Daniel Smith Essential Watercolor Mixing Set, and I'm really excited to use it because I've never done a full illustration, like a finalized product with these paints. So before we begin, I'm going to put the Instagram model and the picture I'm using up on the screen now. I'll also have her account linked in the description of this video. And I'm just going to start sketching out some ideas to really get out the shadows and the highlights of her face. Now that I'm done with these smaller sketches, I'm going to move to the watercolor paper and do a lighter sketch on there, but really get in some of the detail work so I can start the watercolor. And now that I've got that sketch done, I can bring out my paints. Again, I'm using the Daniel Smith Essential Mixing Set, these 6 colors right here. It includes a warm tone and a cool tone of the red, of the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. And they're kind of interesting to use. I really have to learn how to mix the colors right, so that'll be the main challenge I think with this piece. But yeah, now I can just get right into painting. As usual, after sketching out this picture and getting a few anchor points down on the page, I began with the skin tone and mixing one of those with some cooler toned red and a nice bright yellow color. And I added that and added a few shadows as I did that. I didn't go too into detail, especially because whenever I put the shadow on, it will lighten up as it dries. So after I did the base coat for that, I moved on to the hair and added a much lighter tone than what I thought I would end up with, but I kind of want to move towards that because I feel like watercolor, you're supposed to build up the color by layers, and so that was my process, my thoughts while painting the hair and the skin. After adding the base coat for the skin and for the hair, I moved on to her sweater, just a plain black color. I went over it a few times because, again, I need to build up that watercolor in layers to get a really rich, dark color, and then move back on to add detail to her hair because I did it so light in the beginning. This time I really did add quite a bit of darker tones, like some black almost. It was very dark brown is the color of her hair, but I really did add some almost black color to the shadow side of that. And continuing on adding shadows, I added some shadows to her neck area just to really emphasize the shadow and the light that hit one side of her, because really this image is divided in half, where one half of it is in the light and the other half is covered in shadow. When adding these shadows, not only to her neck but also to her face, I wanted to kind of give a more tannish undertone and try to get it back to her true skin tone, because I did feel like the original was a little too pinkish and a little too light. So I tried to make overall the skin a little more orange tone, a little more tan, and kind of really emphasize what her actual skin tone looked like and how the light impacted that skin tone as well. After adding a few details to the hair, I moved on to very dark shadows. Again, kind of emphasizing that half and half mentality where half of her face is in light and half of it is in shadow. I also previously added a base coat to her lips, and I've gone over her sweater just a couple of times because it was really dark and I felt like every time I added a layer it would get a little bit lighter when it dried, so I wanted to make sure that her sweater looked black instead of a light gray. At this point, I felt like the skin and the hair were kind of coming together, and so I wanted to move on to more detailed parts of her face, specifically her eyes and her lips. So I added some shade to those and some color to her eyes and a bit brighter red to her lips, and just kind of added final details. Her eyebrows got added, just to kind of finalize the face. In the original image, there is actually a background in this picture, so unlike my normal portrait pictures, I decided to actually add the background because it was pretty simple. It was just a sky meeting the ocean, and so I thought it was really nice, just a subtle little background that kind of added some detail and some depth to this piece. And I think it turned out pretty nice. It wasn't anything really complicated. I added some clouds that weren't really present in the picture just because I thought I, again, added more detail and added some nice texture to the ocean as well. While I was doing the background and kind of after doing the background, I added, again, just really small details to her face. I added some jelly roll to her eyes to give it a nice highlight, and also a little bit to her lips. I also blended out her lips and gave a little more structure to her nose. The final thing I did in this illustration was add a little bit of messiness to her hair. I added some stray strands that kind of went around where the bulk of her hair was, just to give it more detail again and more realism. I do think that it kind of doesn't look as good. I wish I didn't add it as many strands and as much messiness as I did, but again, all things do not need to be perfect, and it was a good learning experience for me. I don't think it turned out exactly how I expected. This portrait, it wasn't perfect, but overall it wasn't terrible, and I learned a lot from it, so I'm glad I did it. Okay guys, with those last couple of details done, I think this piece is completed. So usually I sign the piece with a black watercolor or black something, but I'm going to try to do it with my Jelly Roll pen. And thanks for watching this video and sticking with me through this whole process. And I hope you enjoyed it if you did. And I hope to see you next time. Bye.